The heel of Asha's left shoe snapped off somewhere between the front steps of the Kincaid residence and the iron gate at the end of the drive, so she walked the last 50 feet listing sideways, one shoulder lower than the other, clutching a black garbage bag that held everything she still owned in the world. She didn't stop to look for the heel. The Kincaids had given her 40 minutes. Gloria Kincaid had delivered that information with the particular gentleness of a woman who understood that cruelty was most effective when it wore a reasonable face. 40 minutes, Asha. That's quite generous, given the circumstances. The circumstances being Reese's death 4 days prior. The circumstances being the updated will, the real one, notarized by a federal official, had apparently ceased to exist, replaced by an earlier document leaving the entirety of his estate to the Kincaid family trust. Her fingers went numb before she'd even made it to the curb. The rain came down the way it did in Vancouver in November, not dramatic, just persistent. The kind that soaked through wool and got into your shoes and stayed there. Asha sat down on the wet concrete and pulled her knees to her chest and stared at the estate lit up at the top of the hill with every window warm and yellow. She had $214 in her checking account. Her mother was in Winnipeg, her sister in Halifax. She had colleagues, people she'd eaten lunch beside for 3 years at the accounting firm, but she'd left that job when she married Reese and moved into the Kincaid world, and the Kincaid world had very specific ideas about what Reese's wife should and shouldn't do with her professional skills. Morton Kincaid had made that clear at the first family dinner she'd attended. "We don't need another accountant," he'd said, with the warm smile of a man who'd never encountered a closed door in his life. "We need you to be Reese's wife. That's a full-time job in itself." She'd been too in love and too naive to understand that what he actually needed was to keep her away from the books. She pulled her phone from her coat pocket. The screen had cracked when one of Morton's security staff, a thick-necked man named Petch, instructed to escort her out with prejudice, had grabbed her wrist in the foyer, and the phone had hit the marble floor. She hadn't cried in that foyer. Crying in front of the Kincaids felt like offering them something, and she'd stopped giving them things. She opened her contacts. She scrolled past the A's, past the B's and C's, until she stopped on a name filed quietly between 2 corporate contacts she hadn't spoken to in over a year. RMC. 4 years ago, Asha had been a junior forensic accountant at a firm specializing in corporate irregularities. She'd been assigned a routine audit of a mid-tier logistics company. 2 weeks, straightforward, home by 5. It hadn't been straightforward. The discrepancies in the third-party shipping invoices were subtle enough that her supervisor had missed them, but Asha had always been better with numbers than people, and numbers told the truth when people wouldn't. 3 holding entities, 1 shell company in Alberta, and a name she'd had to look up: Roland Castle. She hadn't called the CRA. She hadn't called her supervisor. She'd printed a clean summary, taken a cab to the address on the parent entity's corporate registration, and sat in a very quiet lobby for 45 minutes before a man agreed to see her. In retrospect, it was an extraordinary thing for a 27-year-old forensic accountant to do. She'd told herself it was professional integrity. She suspected, now, it was just stubbornness. The same stubbornness keeping her on this curb in the rain instead of calling anyone who could offer her a couch. Roland Castle was tall and broad and entirely unremarkable to look at until you noticed the scar running from his left jaw down into his collar, and then you noticed the 2 men behind him who stood with the specific stillness of people who were never off duty, and then you noticed his eyes, dark, completely without warmth, assessing everything they landed on with the flat efficiency of a calculator. He'd read her summary document without changing expression. "You've found this yourself. It's all documented," she'd said. "The routing, the invoice dates, the shell entities, the methodology is attached." He'd studied her the way he'd studied the document. "You're either very brave or very stupid." "I'm an accountant," she'd said. "I don't like errors." He'd reached into his jacket and produced a plain black card with nothing on it but a phone number. "I settle my debts," he'd said. "You've brought this to me instead of the authorities. That has a value. If you ever need a problem solved, call this number once. Then we're square." She'd taken the card. She'd filed the audit with different findings. She'd told herself it was a one-time compromise and she'd never use the number. She stared at RMC in her contacts. She thought about Gloria Kincaid's face when Asha had asked to keep the ceramic owl from the hallway shelf, the one Reese had won for her at the Pacific National Exhibition the summer they'd met. The way Gloria had arranged her expression into practiced pity. "Those things belong to the estate now, dear." She thought about the portfolio case still inside the house. Leather, burgundy, her initials stamped in gold at the clasp. Reese had handed it to her 3 weeks before he died with a specificity that hadn't made sense at the time. "Your name is on it. That makes it yours. No one can take what has your name on it if you don't let them." She opened a new message. She didn't write words. She took a photograph, the garbage bag on the wet curb, the Kincaid estate glowing at the end of the drive, and sent it to RMC. Then she put the phone face down on her knee and waited. 7 minutes, 8. She was composing all the reasons this was a mistake when headlights appeared around the corner. Not one set. 3. Black SUVs, tinted glass, moving in a tight formation that Shaughnessy Drive was not designed for. They stopped in a line, engines idled, the rear door of the middle vehicle opened. Cassell stepped out without an umbrella. He was grayer at the temples than she remembered. The scar on his jaw caught the streetlight for a moment before he moved into shadow. He wore a dark coat over a charcoal suit, and he didn't flinch at the rain, didn't adjust his posture, didn't do anything except look down at Asha on the curb with the same flat attention he'd given her summary document 4 years ago. He looked at the garbage bag. He looked at her hands. His jaw tightened barely, a single contraction, and then it was gone. The photo was sufficient, Cassell said. His voice was exactly as she remembered. Low, dry, carrying without effort. "You didn't need the address. I know this street." "They kept my portfolio case," Asha said. Her voice came out steadier than she'd expected. "Burgundy leather, gold clasp, my initials. It's still inside. Your certifications." And something Reese hid in it. She heard herself say it out loud for the first time. "I don't know what. He gave me the case before he died, and I didn't understand why until just now." Cassell was quiet for a moment. "Get in the car," he said. "I'm not." "You're sitting in the rain on a curb in Shaughnessy," he said. "Get in the car, Asha." She picked up the ceramic owl and got in. The interior was warm and smelled of leather and something faintly resinous. Cassell settled beside her. The door closed and the rain became a background condition rather than an immediate one. A man in the front passenger seat, younger, close-cropped, with the contained energy of someone who'd spent time in the military, turned without being asked. Kincaid's house lawyer filed a document package at Stanton and Clark, West Georgia, at 9:23 tonight, the man said. "Key fob entry logged." He took the portfolio to his lawyer, Asha said, to catalogue it. "He'd want to know what I had before I could claim it." She paused. "His name is Bio?" "Yes," Cassell said. He didn't elaborate. "Stanton's office," he said to Bio. She didn't watch what happened at the office of Jeffrey Stanton. She sat in the warm dark of the SUV and listened to the rain and thought about the last morning she'd spent with Reese. His hands shaking too badly to hold a mug, letting her hold it for him, watching her with the careful steadiness of a man memorizing something. Cassell was back in 22 minutes. He handed her the portfolio case without commentary. Asha unzipped it with hands gone clumsy. Her certifications, her notes from a seminar in Calgary 2 years ago, and then in the interior sleeve against the spine a second zip she'd never noticed. Thin enough to miss if you weren't looking. Inside it, a USB drive no larger than her thumbnail. Bio had a laptop over the seat back within 40 seconds. The drive contained 4 folders. She opened the voice memo first. Reese's voice came through the speakers. Slightly strained, the way it had been in the last year when he was tired, which was always. "Asha, if you're listening to this, you found the case. which means you were smart enough not to let them take it, or stubborn enough to get it back. You were always both. A pause, the sound of him shifting, uncomfortable. I need you to know I didn't understand what my father was doing until September. I found the discrepancy in the trust disbursements, and I spent 6 weeks confirming it. The construction company in Nevada hasn't broken ground on a single project. The money moves through them and arrives clean on the other side. Morton isn't building anything. He's washing something. A longer pause. I told him I was going to the RCMP. 2 weeks later, the cardiologist revised my prognosis. I don't believe that's a coincidence. I couldn't prove it, and I didn't have time to try. His voice went quieter. The statutory declaration is in the 4th folder. It supersedes everything. Take the USB to the RCMP commercial crime section. Go federal, not local. Morton has local relationships. He stopped. When he started again, the formality had gone out of his voice entirely. I loved you from the first time you told me I'd made a subtraction error on the restaurant bill. Please be difficult, Asha. You're extraordinarily good at it. The memo ended. The SUV was very quiet. Asha kept her eyes on the screen until the tightness in her chest compressed itself into something she could carry. She opened the 2nd folder, a spreadsheet built on her own architecture, her column structure and color coding, applied to transaction data she'd never seen. He'd taken her methodology and turned it into evidence. The 3rd folder was email screenshots, a correspondence between Reese and an external forensic accountant he'd quietly retained. The 4th was a statutory declaration, signed, witnessed, stamped by a federal notary 11 weeks before his death. All real property, investment accounts, and corporate shares held in the name of Reese Kincaid were to transfer unconditionally to his spouse, Asha Brent-Kincaid. He knew, she said. Yes. They killed him. Castle didn't answer. His silence was not evasion. It was the silence of a man who dealt in certain truths and understood when to let them stand uncontested. I need the RCMP, Asha said. Federal, commercial crime. Someone who hasn't had dinner with Morton Kincaid in the last calendar year. She looked at Castle. Can you find that? Yes. And I need the estate. The declaration filed, the forged will invalidated. Her voice was steady. She had not expected it to be. Reese wanted me to have it. I want it because Morton wanted it, and that is reason enough. Something shifted in Castle's expression. Not much, barely anything, but something. Bio, he said. Find me a contact in commercial crime, someone ambitious and free of local entanglement. He paused. We filed the declaration first thing. The RCMP arrived at the Kincaid estate at 7:14 on a Thursday morning. Asha was not there. She was in a solicitor's office on Granville Street, watching the statutory declaration get stamped and entered into the system with a finality that felt, for the first time in 5 days, like solid ground. She learned what happened at the estate through Bio, who had a comprehensive relationship with information of all kinds. Morton had been in the kitchen. He'd attempted to invoke his relationship with the deputy chief, which was ineffective because the officers were federal. Gloria had stood in the hallway demanding credentials, then a solicitor, then made a statement that Bio described as legally inadvisable. Stanton had arranged his own representation before they arrived, which suggested he'd understood for some time that this was a foreseeable outcome. Asha drove to the estate in the afternoon. She used the key they hadn't thought to take back. She walked through the foyer. The marble was cold, the way it had always been, imported stone designed to communicate something about legacy, and went directly to Morton's study. She sat behind his desk. She opened his files. The internal accounting was exactly what Reese's spreadsheet had suggested. She documented it for 2 hours with her phone camera, methodical and unhurried, the way she worked when the numbers were finally speaking clearly. She heard footsteps in the hallway. Cassell appeared in the doorway. He'd changed, darker suit, no tie. Something in his posture was different from the night before, a fraction less contained, like a man who hadn't slept but wouldn't say so. The filing is confirmed, he said. The estate transfers are initiated. You'll have account access within 72 hours. I want to liquidate the investment holdings, Asha said. Put them somewhere that does something. The trust has been a vehicle for fraud for 3 years. I want it to be a vehicle for something else. She looked at the files. The commercial properties Morton built before this, the legitimate ones. I can restructure those into something I can manage. Castle walked to the desk. He picked up one of the spreadsheets. He studied it with the same flat attention he'd given everything she'd ever shown him. You pulled his accounts. I'm a forensic accountant, she said. This is what I do. He set it down. The debt is settled, he said. Last night counted. We're square. I know, she said, but I have a problem. She held his gaze. I know numbers. I don't know the city the way it works at this level. I don't know who Morton had arrangements with. The moment word spreads that he's under federal investigation, someone will move in. Someone worse. She paused. I need a partner who knows the landscape. Someone with, for lack of a better description, a persuasive presence. Cassell was quiet. My world doesn't clean up, he said finally. Not warning her off, just accurate. You step into a partnership with me, you carry that. Asha thought about Reese's voice on the recording. Please be difficult. Mr. Cassell, she said, I covered your financial irregularities 4 years ago. I married into a family laundering money through a charitable trust. My hands are not clean. She looked at him steadily. I just want what gets built here to be better than what was here before, and I cannot do that alone. The study was quiet. Outside, the late afternoon light came through the windows at a low angle, grey and even, the way light was in Vancouver in November. Cassell extended his hand. Asha shook it. His grip was firm and unhurried, and it felt like the conclusion of a contract, which was exactly what it was. 3 months later, rain returned to the city. It always did. Asha had stopped resisting it. She sat at the head of the boardroom table in the building on West Hastings. Kincaid Holdings, which had been renamed in the interim paperwork to Brent Group, without ceremony and without announcement. Around the table sat 6 men and 1 woman who had all been, until recently, loyal to Morton Kincaid's vision of what this company was for. They were adjusting. The Burnaby warehouse leases, said a man named Trevitt, who had been Morton's logistics manager for 11 years and possessed an uncanny ability to sweat through expensive shirts. The renewal terms are below market. If we renegotiate, we risk losing the tenants. The relationships were personal, Asha said. Yes. Those relationships existed because Morton was providing something beyond below-market leases. She kept her voice even. We're not providing that anymore. Renegotiate at fair market rate, give the tenants 60 days to accept. If they leave, we lease to someone who doesn't need a personal relationship to stay. Trevitt started to respond. The glass door at the back of the room opened. Cassell walked in. He held no title on any document associated with Brent Group, but the boardroom recalibrated the moment he entered it, some shift in atmosphere, the way pressure drops before weather comes. He moved around the perimeter of the table without hurry and positioned himself beside Asha's chair with his hands in his pockets, saying nothing, looking at Trevitt with the same quiet, complete attention he gave everything. Trevitt closed his mouth. 60 days, Asha said. Draft the notices by Thursday. When the last board member had filed out, she let out a long breath and rolled her shoulders. You do that on purpose, she said. The standing there. Standing is not inherently purposeful, Cassell said. Your standing is. She looked up at him. They're afraid of you. They're afraid of you, he said. I'm just the thing on your desk that nobody wants to touch. A pause. The federal proceedings move to disclosure next week. Morton's counsel will see the USB contents. Reese's voice memo becomes part of the public record. I wanted you to know before it happens. Asha nodded. She'd known it was coming. He'd have been fine with it, she said. Reese believed in documentation. He'd have thought it was the correct outcome. She picked up the ceramic owl from the corner of the desk, where she'd kept it since they'd moved into this office, repaired with wood glue at the base crack, which was not a perfect repair, but held well enough. She turned it over in her hands. The Burnaby tenants, Cassell said. 2 are legitimate. The other 4 have Morton-era arrangements I've been monitoring. She looked at him. Since when? December. You could have told me. You were focused on the restructuring. I was focused on the exposure points. His voice was even. It was an efficient division. It was also unilateral. Yes, and then, with what she'd come to understand was his version of an apology. Earlier, next time. She set the owl down. She walked to the window. 13 floors below, West Hastings moved through the rain. Ordinary traffic, ordinary lives. The city doing what cities do regardless of what happens in the buildings above. Reese used to say his father built things the way you build a house on sand, she said. He meant all of it, the business, the relationships, the whole structure. She paused. He wanted to know if something could be built differently. I think that's actually why he left it to me. Not because I was his wife, because I was the one who'd know how to read the numbers. She heard Cassell move. He came to stand beside her, not close but close enough that she was aware of the solid, unhurried quality of him, the stillness she'd found terrifying once, and now found, despite everything, grounding. Can you, he said quietly, build it differently? She looked out at the rain on the glass. I've got the numbers right, she said. That's always where you start. She felt rather than saw him look at her, that flat, reading gaze. Then we start, he said. Below them, the city moved through the rain. The Kincaid name was coming off the building at the end of the month. Morton was in a federal holding facility in Abbotsford. Gloria was under house arrest in West Vancouver. Stanton had taken a plea his barrister called unfavorable but manageable, which was the legal profession's way of saying the next several years were going to be educational. Asha thought about a wet curb in Shaughnessy, a garbage bag splitting at the seam, a ceramic owl in the rain. Please be difficult. She picked up her pen. She got back to work.